First contact. The crystalline spires of Acaleodynia glittered under the light of three suns, casting prismatic rainbows across the central plaza, where students from across the galaxy gathered. Located on the neutral world of Nexus Prime, the institution stood as the most prestigious center of higher learning in the known universe. Species from over 500 worlds sent their brightest minds here, where cutting-edge technology and ancient wisdom blended into what many called the pinnacle of galactic education. Provost Kithax, a 12-foot-tall insectoid with iridescent carapace and 6 articulated limbs, tapped his ceremonial staff 3 times on the marble-like surface. The sound reverberated through the plaza, silencing the cacophony of different languages, clicks, whistles, and telepathic murmurs. Behind him stood the Council of Elders, representatives from the founding species who had established Acaleodynia 10,000 years earlier. Today marks the 5,732nd academic cycle, Kithax announced, his translator converting his chittering speech into the standard galactic tongue. And a historic moment for our institution. For the first time, we welcome a representative from Sol 3, commonly known as Earth. A wave of whispers swept through the crowd. Many students activated their information visors, pulling up data on this unfamiliar world. Earth was a relative newcomer to galactic society, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years prior. Their admission to the Galactic Confederation had been controversial, with many established species questioning whether these short-lived, biologically simple beings deserved recognition. Fax gestured with his upper limbs, and a small figure stepped forward from the shadows of the grand entrance. A female human, barely 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that reflected determination despite obvious nervousness. Students of Acaleodynia, I present Ilara Chen, first human accepted to our institution in its history. Ilara took a deep breath and stepped forward. The gravity on Nexus Prime was slightly stronger than Earth's, making each step a conscious effort. The air contained trace elements her lungs weren't evolved to filter, necessitating the small adapter at her throat that processed each breath. Even the light spectrum was broader here, requiring the protective film over her eyes. I am honored to represent Earth at this esteemed institution, she said, her voice carrying across the plaza through the amplification field. I hope to learn from all of you and share what humanity has to offer. From the gathered students, a tall, willowy figure with luminescent skin scoffed audibly. Varex of the Lumidian ascendancy, son of their High Counselor, didn't bother lowering his voice. What could a species that only mastered atomic energy a mere 200 years ago possibly teach us? They're practically embryos in evolutionary terms. His entourage, other students from elder races, laughed, their sounds ranging from melodic chimes to guttural rumbles. Thax silenced them with a piercing gaze from his compound eyes. Acaleodynia judges individuals by their merit, not their species' technological timeline. Ilara Chen's admission was earned through her scientific achievements, as with all students. The ceremony continued, but Ilara felt the weight of countless alien gazes, some curious, others dismissive, a few openly hostile. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but standing here, surrounded by beings whose civilizations had reached the stars when humans were still figuring out agriculture, the magnitude of the challenge truly registered. Ilara's quarters reflected the standard accommodations for first-cycle students, a living space, study area, and hygiene chamber adapted to her biological needs. The neural interface terminal that dominated one wall, however, presented her first significant challenge. Most species at Acaleodynia had evolved with or developed neural connectivity, allowing direct mind-to-machine interaction. Humans, with their primitive electrochemical brains, required adapters. Ilara stared at the sleek, metallic circlet that would serve as her interface. Earth scientists had assured her it was safe, but the prospect of connecting her mind directly to alien technology still unnerved her. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. It slid open to reveal a being that resembled a cross between a fox and a jellyfish, rust-colored fur covering a semi-translucent body with tendrils that floated gently despite the lack of water. Greetings, Terran. I am Zixna, your academic advisor, the creature said, its voice melodic. I've been assigned to help you adapt to our systems. Thank you, Ilara replied, gesturing to the neural interface. I was just working up the courage to try this. Zixna's tendrils undulated in what Ilara would later learn was amusement. Most species experience apprehension initially. The interface doesn't read thoughts, merely translates neural electrical patterns into computational commands. A pause. Though for humans, we've had to develop special protocols. Your brains are uniquely structured. Uniquely primitive, you mean, Ilara said with a slight smile. Different, Zixna corrected diplomatically. Now shall we begin? The next 3 hours were spent calibrating the interface to Ilara's brainwave patterns. The sensation was strange but not unpleasant, like thinking through a mild echo. Her commands translated into action within the Academy's vast information network. You've adapted more quickly than expected, Zixna noted. Your species demonstrates surprising neuroplasticity. We've had to adapt quickly throughout our history, Ilara replied. It's kind of our thing. The following weeks proved challenging beyond measure. The curriculum at Acaliadinia wasn't merely advanced. It operated on principles that often contradicted what Ilara had been taught on Earth. Quantum mechanics worked differently here, incorporating dimensions humans had yet to discover. Biology encompassed life forms based on elements Earth scientists hadn't even placed on their periodic table. In her comparative civilizations class, Professor Uloth, a gaseous entity contained within an articulated exosuit, presented historical timelines of various species' development. Notice the average time between the discovery of nuclear fission and the development of gravitational manipulation, Uloth said, gesturing to holographic charts. For most species, approximately 1,500 standard years. A highlighted line appeared, dramatically shorter than the others. Humans achieved this transition in barely a century. This acceleration is why many find your species concerning. Ilara raised her hand. Professor, couldn't this acceleration also be viewed as an adaptive strength? It could also indicate dangerous corner cutting. Came a voice from across the lecture hall. Verex again, his luminescent skin pulsing with dismissive colors. The human tendency to leap before looking is well documented in xenoanthropological studies. They implement technologies before fully understanding consequences. An interesting perspective, Verex, Professor Uloth responded. Though I wonder if that assessment comes from research or prejudice. Verex's skin darkened in what Ilara recognized as the Lumidian equivalent of a flush. The facts speak for themselves. Humans nearly destroyed their homeworld multiple times before achieving space travel. Their history is a series of near-extinction events of their own making. Ilara wanted to argue but found she couldn't entirely refute his claims. Earth's history was indeed marked by destructive tendencies alongside innovation. After class, as students filed out through dimensional doorways to various parts of the campus, Ilara found herself alone in a corridor she didn't recognize. The Academy's architecture shifted regularly, optimizing for traffic patterns and educational needs. Without full neural integration, she sometimes missed the subtle cues that warned of impending changes. Lost again, Terran. She turned to find a student she hadn't met before, an Archivian, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They resembled nothing so much as animated crystal formations, their bodies constantly shifting and refracting light. The campus shifted while I was thinking, Ilara admitted. You can't hear the harmonic warnings? The Archivian asked, then emitted a sound like wind through crystal chimes. Ah, human auditory range. Limited. The crystal being shifted, extending what might have been an arm. I am Key 7809 Sigma. You may call me Sigma. Ilara Chen. Nice to meet you. You are the first human I've encountered. I find your species intriguing. Your architectural achievements display surprising ingenuity despite material constraints. Coming from an Archivian, whose species built cities that lasted millions of years. This was substantial praise. Thank you. Though lately, I feel I'm in over my head here. Sigma's crystalline structure vibrated slightly. A curious idiom, but accurate perhaps. You have heard of the Innovation Symposium. Briefly, it's some kind of competition. The most prestigious event of the academic cycle. Teams present solutions to major galactic problems. Winners receive funding and implementation support from the Confederation Council. Sigma paused, light refracting through their form. Most first-cycle students do not participate. The challenges are considerable. Let me guess, no human has ever competed. Correct. Though there is no rule against it. Ilara smiled slowly. Is there a rule against an Archivian and a human teaming up? The Innovation Symposium was announced formally 2 days later. This cycle's challenge: developing sustainable energy solutions for Class 3 neutron star systems, where traditional antimatter harvesting proved inconsistent and dangerous. Ilara spent hours in the Academy's knowledge nexus, absorbing what information she could through her limited neural interface. Humans had barely begun to harness their own sun's energy efficiently. Neutron stars operated on principles that Earth scientists had only theorized about. Her research was interrupted by a commotion in the Central Commons area. A group of students had gathered around a holographic projection of Earth. Their primary energy still comes from combustion of fossil materials, Verex was explaining to the crowd. Some regions have achieved fusion, but most still rely on primitive solar collection or wind harnessing. His skin pulsed with derisive colors. And this species presumes to compete in the Innovation Symposium. Ilara pushed through the crowd. Who told you I was competing? Verex's tendrils rippled. News travels quickly here, human. Your partnership with the Archivian has raised eyebrows. Many wonder what Sigma sees in such a basic species. Perhaps what Sigma sees is that sometimes a fresh perspective can reveal solutions others miss. Came a new voice. A Theldarian moved forward, their body a mass of interconnected blue tentacles supporting a central sensory cluster. I am Enxterra. My species was once considered primitive too, until we revolutionized dimensional mathematics. The Theldarian emerged after millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Verex countered. Humans are barely out of their genetic infancy. And yet they achieved space travel in a fraction of the time it took most of us. Enxterra replied. I find that worthy of study rather than derision. The Theldarian turned to Ilara. I would be interested in joining your team for the symposium, if you are amenable. Before Ilara could respond, another student stepped forward. A mecha-organic hybrid from the Siberian collective, their partly mechanical body humming with energy. As would I, said the hybrid, voice harmonizing between organic vocals and synthesized tones. I am CV9, specializing in energy conversion systems. Your species' approach to problem-solving has been flagged as unconventional in our historical databases. Unconventional approaches produce innovation. Ilara looked from one alien to another, surprise giving way to determination. We'd be glad to have you both. Verex scoffed. A team of misfits and a human. How appropriate. I'll take misfits over elitists any day. Ilara replied, finding confidence she hadn't known she possessed. Innovation rarely comes from those too comfortable with the status quo. As the crowd dispersed, Ilara stood with her new teammates, a living crystal, a mass of tentacles, and a cyborg, and felt, for the first time since arriving at Acaleidemia, that she might actually belong. What began as a desperate attempt to prove humanity's worth was evolving into something more significant. The Innovation Symposium was still months away, but already Ilara sensed that win or lose, her presence at Acaleidemia was disrupting centuries of assumptions about her species, and disruption was often the first step toward revolution. The revolution. The laboratory assigned to Ilara's team sat on the outer ring of Acaleidemia, where experimental energies could be safely contained. 3 months had passed since the Innovation Symposium was announced, and their workspace had transformed from sterile academic environment to what Ilara's grandfather would have called organized chaos. Holographic models of neutron stars rotated above workstations. Prototype energy collectors lined the walls, some still smoking from failed tests. Scattered across every surface were oddities that puzzled other academic teams who occasionally peered in. Physical paper notebooks filled with Ilara's handwriting, mechanical pencils, and even a small whiteboard where she sketched ideas the old-fashioned way. "I still don't understand your insistence on these antiquated methods," CV9 said, mechanical eyes adjusting focus on Ilara's latest sketch. "The neural design interface is exponentially more efficient." "For you, maybe," Ilara replied, tapping her pencil against the board. "But humans think differently when we physically write or draw. It engages different neural pathways." Sigma's crystalline form shifted, refracting light into a spectral analysis of their latest energy model. "The human approach has merit. Their historical records show many breakthroughs emerged from such analog processes." Terra flowed across the ceiling, tentacles manipulating multiple holographic interfaces simultaneously. "The real question is whether our combined approach will yield results before the symposium deadline. 16 competing teams have already submitted preliminary." Ilara stood back from her whiteboard, studying the rough sketch that had evolved over weeks of trial and error. Unlike other teams focusing on directly harnessing neutron star energy, her team had taken a radically different approach. "The problem isn't collecting the energy," she said, not for the first time. "It's stabilizing it. Every solution so far tries to control something fundamentally uncontrollable. Hence our divergent approach," CV9 agreed, their mechanical components humming as they processed calculations, "though even our simulations show only a 31.7% chance of success." Ilara smiled. "Better odds than humanity faced during most of our history." Their design was neither elegant nor simple by galactic standards. Rather than trying to directly harness the volatile energies of neutron stars, they proposed a system that rode the chaos. A network of adaptive collectors that would constantly shift and adjust to energy fluctuations, much like Earth's early sailing ships had once tacked to capture changing winds. The concept had come from an unlikely source: Ilara's childhood experiences sailing with her grandfather on Lake Michigan. Sometimes, he told her, "You don't fight the elements. You dance with them." This philosophy, so intrinsically human, had puzzled her alien teammates initially. Most advanced species approached problems as equations to be solved, forces to be controlled. The idea of adapting to chaos rather than subduing it seemed counterintuitive, even primitive. But as their prototype had evolved, so had their understanding. There was wisdom in the approach, an elegance and flexibility that rigid control mechanisms couldn't match. A soft chime interrupted their work, followed by Professor Uloth's gaseous form materializing in their laboratory. "I've reviewed your preliminary submission," the professor said without preamble. "Your approach is unconventional." "That was our intention," Ilara replied. "Unconventional is a diplomatic term." The professor's exoswitch shifted, displaying data scrolling too fast for Ilara to read. "The symposium committee has concerns. Your design relies heavily on adaptive algorithms rather than established quantum containment principles. Because quantum containment fails in Class 3 neutron star environments." Terra interjected, tentacles rippling with intensity. "That's the entire point of this challenge." "Indeed. However, the committee questions whether a first-cycle student team, particularly one led by—" Uloth paused. "A representative from a nascent spacefaring species has the expertise to challenge established methodologies." Ilara felt a familiar frustration rising. "We've run over 3,000 simulations. Our design shows promise precisely because it doesn't rely on methodologies that have already proven inadequate." "Simulations are not reality, Ms. Chen." The professor's tone remained neutral, but Ilara detected underlying skepticism. "Nevertheless, your team has been cleared to continue to the prototype testing phase." Just be prepared for significant scrutiny. After Professor Uloth departed, the laboratory fell silent. Finally, Sigma spoke, their crystalline form emitting a soft, bell-like tone. The existence of prejudice does not negate the value of our work. CV9's mechanical components were in what Ilara had come to recognize as their version of a psi. Acknowledged. But the professor is correct about one thing. Simulations are not reality. We need a working prototype. Then let's build one, Ilara said, determination replacing frustration, and show them exactly what a human and a team of misfits can do. The Academy's testing facility was a marvel of engineering. A massive sphere that could simulate various cosmic conditions, from the vacuum of deep space to the crushing gravity wells of black holes. Today, it was configured to replicate the environment near a Class 3 neutron star, complete with electromagnetic fluctuations and radiation bursts. All 16 competing teams had gathered for preliminary testing, their prototypes ranging from massive energy collection arrays to devices so small they could fit in the palm of a hand. Most relied on variations of standard quantum containment technology, refined and improved, but fundamentally the same approach that had proven problematic in real-world applications. Ilara's team had arrived early, their prototype commanding curious stares. Unlike the sleek, minimalist designs favored in galactic engineering, their device looked almost organic, a central hub surrounded by what appeared to be metallic tentacles or sails that shifted and adjusted continuously, even at rest. Rather inelegant, came Varex's familiar voice as he approached with his team of senior students. It resembles primitive earth-water vessels more than advanced technology. Form follows function, Ilara replied calmly. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. Simplicity born of necessity due to limited understanding is not innovation, Varex countered. It's compensation. Before Ilara could respond, a tremendous boom shook the testing facility. Warning lights flashed as emergency protocols activated throughout the academy. Attention all students and faculty, came the automated announcement. A stellar remnant collision has been detected in the Nexer system. Level 3 radiation surge inbound. All power systems diverting to protective shields. The holographic displays throughout the facility showed the situation. 2 neutron stars in a neighboring system had collided, sending a wave of radiation and gravitational distortion toward Nexus Prime. The Academy shields were activating, but the surge would put unprecedented strain on their power grid. All testing suspended, announced the facility director, her multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly in concern. Report to designated safety areas immediately. As students began moving toward the exits, the facility's lights flickered ominously. The shields protecting Acaleidemia and the surrounding settlements required immense energy. Energy the Academy's power systems were struggling to provide against the approaching cosmic event. Provost Kfax's image appeared on all displays. The Academy's primary power core is experiencing instability due to radiation interference. Auxiliary systems are coming online, but may not reach full capacity before the surge arrives. All non-essential personnel must evacuate to underground shelters. Ilara looked at their team's prototype, then at the facility's power readouts showing rapidly declining stability. A wild idea formed in her mind. Our system, she said suddenly to her teammates, it's designed to harness volatile energy from neutron stars. CV9's mechanical eyes brightened in understanding. The radiation surge carries similar energy signatures. We'd need to recalibrate completely. Terra cautioned, tentacles rippling with concern. And connect to the Academy's power grid. Sigma added, without authorization. Without it, the shields might fail, Ilara said. We don't have time for authorization. The decision took seconds. As other students evacuated, Ilara's team moved against the flow, wheeling their prototype toward the facility's main power junction. Faculty members were too focused on emergency protocols to notice 4 students connecting an unauthorized device to critical systems. Adaptive algorithms initializing, CV9 announced, their cybernetic components interfacing directly with their prototype, recalibrating collection parameters for incoming radiation surge. Their device hummed to life, its metal sails extending and beginning to rotate in complex patterns. Unlike traditional energy collectors that tried to capture and contain power in rigid structures, their system was designed to flow with energy, redirecting it through constantly shifting pathways that prevented buildup or overload. "It's working," Terra exclaimed as power readings stabilized. "We're capturing the leading edge of the surge." The prototype wasn't designed to handle an entire academy's power needs, but it was doing something perhaps more valuable, stabilizing the fluctuations that threatened to overwhelm the main systems, giving the auxiliary power cores time to fully activate. On the main display, the shield integrity readings stopped their alarming decline and held steady. "Remarkable," came a voice behind them. Professor Uloth had returned to the testing facility. "You've created a buffer system." "Not intentionally," Ilara admitted. "Our prototype was designed for neutron star energy collection, but the principles translate." "Adaptation rather than resistance," the professor observed. "A distinctly human perspective." As the radiation surge peaked and began to dissipate, the Academy's full auxiliary power came online. Their prototype had bridged a critical gap, preventing shield failure during the most dangerous minutes of the event. When the emergency was officially ended hours later, Ilara's team found themselves summoned to the Provost's chamber. A rare honor for students of any species, unprecedented for a first-cycle human. The Central Council chamber gleamed with the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 worlds. Ancient artifacts and cutting-edge technology seamlessly coexisted, much like the diverse species that filled the tiered seating surrounding the central floor where Ilara and her team now stood. Provost Kathax towered above them, his insectoid form somehow more impressive in this formal setting. Beside him stood representatives from the Academy's highest governing bodies, including several who had traveled from distant worlds specifically for this gathering. Acaliadignia has existed for over 5 millennia, the Provost began, his translator rendering his clicks and chirps into measured formal speech. "In that time, we have prided ourselves on recognizing innovation wherever it emerges. Today, we acknowledge such innovation from an unexpected source." The chamber's holographic systems activated, displaying a technical breakdown of their prototype's performance during the crisis. The data was unequivocal. Their system had prevented catastrophic shield failure during the critical minutes before auxiliary power fully engaged. "What is particularly notable," continued Kathax, "is not merely that it worked, but why it worked. Traditional approaches to energy management within our galactic community have focused on containment and control, imposing order upon chaos. This team took a fundamentally different approach, embracing adaptability over rigid structure." A member of the council stepped forward, an ancient Chronosian whose species was among the first to achieve interstellar travel. "We have reviewed your original Innovation Symposium submission. The principles applied during our recent crisis were merely an adaptation of your neutron star collection design." "Yes, Elder," Ilara confirmed. "The underlying philosophy is the same. A philosophy that appears deeply rooted in human history," the Chronosian observed. "Your species' development has been shaped by adaptation to changing conditions rather than mastery over them, a necessity born from your homeworld's volatile climate and geological instability. What some might consider a primitive approach," another council member added, "has demonstrated remarkable efficacy when applied to advanced technological challenges." Verex, seated with other student representatives, shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. Provost Kathax's compound eyes seemed to focus directly on Ilara. "Ms. Chen, when you arrived at Acaliadignia, many questioned whether humanity had earned its place among the galactic community. Some suggested your species required centuries more development before true contribution was possible." The Provost's upper limbs made a gesture Ilara recognized as profound respect. "Today, you have demonstrated that different evolutionary paths yield different forms of wisdom, and that age does not always equate to insight. Your team's innovation will not only receive full implementation for neutron star energy collection, but will be adapted for planetary defense systems throughout the Confederation. Murmurs spread through the chamber, mostly approving, though some clearly skeptical. Change came slowly to a community of species where lifespans were measured in centuries or millennia. Furthermore, HFX continued, in recognition of this contribution, the Council has approved an expansion of human admissions to Achalia. Beginning next cycle, 20 positions will be reserved for qualified human applicants. Ilara felt her teammates' presences beside her, Sigma's crystalline form glinting with pride, Anxterra's tentacles rippling with excitement, CV9's mechanical components humming with satisfaction. Different species, different forms, united by a shared vision that transcended their biological origins. "Thank you, Provost Kfax and Honored Council," she said, finding her voice. "But the credit belongs not just to humanity's perspective, but to the unique combination of viewpoints our team represents. Perhaps the greatest innovation isn't any single approach, but the willingness to combine diverse perspectives in pursuit of common goals." Eloquently stated, the Chronosian elder said, "and a philosophy that has guided the Galactic Confederation's most productive eras." The ancient being turned to address the entire chamber. Let this serve as a reminder that the universe reveals its secrets not just to the oldest or most advanced among us, but to those willing to see with new eyes. As the formal ceremony concluded and students filed out of the chamber, Ilara found herself approached by an unexpected figure. Verex, his luminescent skin pulsing with colors she hadn't seen him display before. "Your solution was unorthodox," he said, choosing his words carefully, "but effective. High praise, coming from you." Ilara replied with a slight smile. "Not praise. Acknowledgement." His colors shifted again. "My species achieved space travel 50,000 years ago. We have refined our methodologies to near perfection." "Near perfection can become a trap," Ilara suggested. "It leaves little room for revolutionary thinking." Perhaps, for the first time, uncertainty tinged his voice. The Lumidian Ascendancy has begun re-evaluating its assessment of humanity's potential role in galactic affairs. Your adaptive thinking may complement our established approaches. It wasn't an apology, but from a species as ancient and proud as the Lumidians, it represented a profound shift, one that would ripple through galactic politics and culture in the years to come. 6 months later, Ilara stood at the arrival terminal of Achalia-Dignia's transportation hub, watching as the first expanded cohort of human students emerged from the interstellar shuttle. 20 young people from Earth, their eyes wide with the same mixture of awe and apprehension she had felt upon her arrival. "Ready to meet your species' new representatives?" asked Sigma, their crystalline form resonating with friendly harmonics. "More than ready," Ilara replied, "though I'm not sure they know what they're in for." CV9 and Anxterra joined them, along with dozens of other students from various species who had volunteered to welcome the human arrivals. What had begun as one human's journey to prove her worth had evolved into something far more significant, the beginning of true integration for humanity into the galactic community. As she stepped forward to greet her fellow humans, Ilara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had arrived hoping merely to survive and perhaps win some grudging acceptance for her species. Instead, she had helped spark a revaluation of human potential that reached to the highest levels of galactic governance. The vote to enslave humanity would never come, not now that humans had demonstrated their unique value. Earth would find its place among the stars not through conquest or even technological advancement alone, but through the distinctive perspective its harsh evolutionary journey had forged: the ability to adapt, to find strength in flexibility, and to transform limitations into advantages. The revolution had begun, not with weapons or dramatic confrontations, but with a simple shift in perception. Sometimes, the most profound changes came not from forcing others to see the world your way, but from showing them that different ways of seeing could reveal truths that would otherwise remain hidden. And as Ilara welcomed the next generation of human students to Acaleidemia, she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had known throughout their turbulent history, that sometimes the most unexpected species can change everything.